नहीं 8 बजे भी नहीं आउट
A4, which is on paired samples t-test, correlated t-test that is. So I am straight away coming to my presentation. Is it visible to all? Presentation is visible?
Yes, sir. We are looking smoothly.
Okay. So the today's topic is paired samples t-test. And again, two-tailed and one-tailed. See, whenever there are two samples, so there will be two situations. One situation is two-tailed test, that is testing null hypothesis. Another situation is testing directional hypothesis. Why? Because there are two means. So the alternative hypothesis is that one of the means is greater than the other, or one of the means is smaller than the others. So whenever there are two samples, two group case, we will have two-tailed and one-tailed, whether it is independent sample t-test or paired sample t-test or Mann-Whitney test or Wilcoxon test or sign test, whatever it is. Wherever there are two samples, we will have two-tailed and one-tailed, whether parametric or non-parametric. So my presentation agenda today is characteristics of paired sample t-test. What are the situations which call for use of paired sample t-test? One. Second, research objective and hypothesis. How do we formulate research objective for suitable paired sample t-test and null as well as directional hypothesis for paired sample t-test? Then next is the same point. This point is running through all the presentations. Characteristic is there, research objective and hypothesis is there, underlying distributions are there, effect size is there, conduct is there, and interpretation is there. It is almost common. So underlying distributional assumption and checking. We will be taking up normality of difference scores, then Pittman-Morgan test for equality of paired variances. There is a little difference here in checking normality and homogeneity of variance. Here, normality is checked not regarding each score, each set of scores, but normality of difference between two scores. Again, Pittman-Morgan test, a special test for paired variances, because here the variances are not independent. Variances are paired, correlated. So that factor has to be taken into account. And then third is linearity assumption. Why? Because it is a test involving correlation. And the correlation coefficient should be linear or product movement correlation, very essential assumption underlying product movement correlation is linearity between X and Y. Then we will be conducting two-tailed paired t-test and interpreting it. Then we will be taking up interpretation of one-tailed paired t-test. And lastly, effect size and interpretation with practice exercises. So this is agenda for today. Relatively, today we are lighter than yesterday, because yesterday I had to introduce a few theoretical concepts like significance testing, like the concept of effect size and different types of effect sizes. So next. Next is characteristics. So we come to the first point, that is characteristics. What has happened to this? Why this mark is coming, this sign, this one? Okay. So I begin with an example and then come to the characteristics. Example is, suppose someone wants to compare mean scores of achievement in mathematics of class 8 students before and after remedial instruction. There is a group of students who is given remedial instruction to improve their achievement. So we just assess their achievement before giving them remedial instruction and immediately after giving them remedial instruction. So this is a perfect situation for application of paired sample t-test. Why? Because there is a single group which is tested twice, before the treatment and after giving the treatment. So this is a pre-test post-test design. So paired sample t-test is used when the research design is single group pre-test post-test design. Paired sample t-test compares two paired mean scores. Independent sample t-test compares two independent sample means. Now here there is a correlation between the two set of scores. So the means so obtained are correlated. And then we must have interval scale data because we want to compare mean. The mean is based on interval scale data and subject to the fulfillment of the underlying distributional assumptions, subject to other assumptions, which we will be studying in detail. Now, how to write the research objective and hypothesis? The same way as we formulated research objective for independent sample t-test, here also our research objective is to compare. This is for the situation which I outlined in the previous slide, to compare the mean scores of achievement in mathematics of class 7th students before and after remedial instruction. So here also the research objective should contain the word mean score. Here also the research objective should contain the name of the variable achievement in mathematics. And it should indicate that the two set of scores are, one is before treatment, another is after the treatment. So to compare the mean scores of achievement in mathematics of class 7 students before and after remedial instruction. Null hypothesis will be written like this: there is no significant difference in the mean scores of achievement in mathematics of class 7 students before and after remedial instruction. So objective says to compare, null hypothesis says that there is no significant difference. Rest of the things are same. So if you replace to compare with there is no significant difference, you get the null hypothesis. Then there is a directional hypothesis. Because we are giving remedial instruction, we are giving treatment. So we expect that the scores after giving treatment will be enhanced, will be towards the higher side rather than the lower side. So if this is the expectation, then directional hypothesis will be stated like this: the mean scores of achievement in mathematics of class 7 students after the remedial instruction is significantly higher than the corresponding mean score before the remedial instruction. So it is clear that there are two mean scores. One is after the treatment, another is before the treatment. Naturally, when we are giving some treatment, we are teaching them some fundamental basic concepts, and we expect to improve their achievement. So achievement after the treatment will be improved. This is the say spirit of this directional hypothesis. Mean scores of achievement in mathematics of class 7 students after remedial instruction is significantly higher than the corresponding mean score before the remedial instruction. So if we state null hypothesis and we do not state directional hypothesis, then we are using two-tailed test. But if we state directional hypothesis and we do not state null hypothesis, although null hypothesis is implicit, because ultimately it is the null hypothesis which is tested. Ultimately, it is null hypothesis which is rejected, and directional hypothesis is meant to be retained. You do not reject directional hypothesis, you reject null hypothesis only. So null hypothesis will be there implicitly. Now let us come to the distributional assumptions. What are the different assumptions underlying this paired sample t-test? So paired sample t-test has almost similar kind of assumptions which underlie the independent sample t-test, but similar, not exactly the same. So one is random sample, same. Paired observations. Earlier in independent sample t-test, we had independent observations, but now we have paired observations. Observations are not independent. Actually, we are having two observations, one pair of observation for one subject, another pair of observation for another subject. So there are double the observations, twice of the number of subjects in the sample, twice sample size. Then the variable should be assessed on interval scale at least. This is same. Now there is a difference, a bit difference. Normality assumption is there, but it says normality of the difference scores, not normality of the pre-test and post-test scores separately. Remember, but it is the normality of the difference scores. Difference means either pre-test is minus post-test or post-test minus pre-test, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So normality assumption in respect of paired sample t-test refers to not the pre-test and post-test scores separately, but to the difference scores of the pre-test and post-test. So this is the difference between independent and paired sample t-test. Similarly, absence of outlier refers to the difference scores. Now this variable difference scores, this should not have any significant outliers. And homogeneity of variance is also a bit different. It is homogeneity of the paired variances. So we don't use Levin's test. Levin's test is used for variances, when variances are independent. But here variances are not independent of each other. They are paired. So therefore, we use a different kind of test, and that is called Pitman-Morgan test. We will be discussing it. And another assumption, which was not, which was altogether absent in independent sample t-test, is regarding linearity of relationship between the pre-test and post-test scores. Now, one of the participants communicated with me regarding her own research problem. So she was computing correlation. Correlation has an additional assumption, that is linearity between the two variables. Suppose we are studying correlation between X and Y. So the relationship between x and y should be linear. The product moment coefficient should be linear. So now there are basically three or four assumptions which are to be statistically tested. Remaining can be inspected through, they can be observed through inspection of the variables and tools of the measurement. For example, random sampling process will tell you paired observations. This research design will tell you whether it is paired observation or not. Interval scale data, your tool of assessment will tell you whether the data is on interval scale or not. But these normality, outliers, homogeneity, and linearity, they have to be statistically checked. So one by one, we will see how to test these other assumptions. Now, checking assumptions of normality and outlier. First of all, let us consider the assumption of normality. And I have a data set, data 7 module 4. The steps for checking assumption of normality is like this. We first enter the data in SPSS. Then we compute a new variable. Say we can call it D. D means difference. By subtracting post-test scores from the pre-test scores using the transform option. In the first session, I told you how to compute new variables. The same will be applied here. That is why I told certain things on first day, which are later used. Now, next is check normality of this difference scores through explore option under descriptive. Now you have the new variable difference. You can check whether this new variable is normally distributed or not through explore option under descriptive. Then you can also get box plot of this difference score, and you can interpret the output of the normality check and interpret box plot to conclude about outlier. So this is the sequence of action which we have to take. Let us now start doing it. So I go to this data set and show you how to do. So here you will see the data set. We have very small sample. Sample size is 19. And we have two variables. One is pre-adjustment. Another is post-adjustment. And this number one is the subject. Student number one, student number two. So the subject one scored 68 in pre-adjustment and 56 in post-adjustment, 23 in pre-adjustment, 54 in post-adjustment, 34, 44, 37, 48, 19, 32. So you will find every subject improving adjustment, but a few also lowering the adjustment, like this one, 68, 56. This may be due to chance or due to some other factor. 64, 67, 22, 54, and so on. Now, our purpose, first objective is to test whether the normality assumption holds good or not. For this, as I told you, if it were independent sample t-test, we could have done the normality test for these two separately. But now we have to calculate a new variable, which is difference of these two variables. So this we can do by using this transform compute variable. So you can give the name D, or you can give the name difference pre post adjustment. This is the name I give. It is difference pre post adjustment, and the numeric expression is pre adjustment minus post adjustment. You could have taken it otherwise. Post adjustment pre-adjustment minus post-adjustment. So we can select this post-adjustment from here, left window, and take it to the right window. So now the numeric expression says pre-adjustment minus post-adjustment. Now click at OK, and this SPSS is executed. It says compute difference, execute. So it has executed. We now go to the data. So here you find another variable added. This is difference pre post adjustment. 68 minus 56, 12, 23 minus 54, minus 31, and so on. So there are many differences are negative. Most of the differences are negative, but a few are positive as well. And our null hypothesis is that their mean is 0. Difference is 0. Some are positive, some are negative. Difference is 0. Now we are right now bothered about normality. So this difference of pre and post adjustment scores, this should be normally distributed. So how to check normality? You go to analyze, descriptive, then explore. Then we want to check the normality of this variable, difference between pre and post. So there is no factor here. Now come to plot. Plot normality, plot with test. Stem and leaf uncheck. Okay. Continue and okay. So we get the output of this normality check. Let us see this. What do we get? We get a descriptive. This is descriptive statistics in respect of difference between pre and post adjustment. Difference between pre and post. This is skewness, kurtosis. We will go to presentation, just looking at what is there in it. Test of normality. Then QQ plot. Then determined normal plot. Oh yeah, this is box plot. So I'm going back to the presentation. Here you have the output of the normality check. So this is the first table, table number 1, descriptive. So we have to interpret the normality of this difference score by looking at skewness and kurtosis. Now look at these two values. Skewness is minus 0.65 and kurtosis is minus 0.614. Now these two values are within the range of plus minus 2. So we can assume distribution to be normal. Now again, the ratio of this 0.065 to 0.524, this ratio is again, this is even less than 1. Similarly, this ratio is also less than 1 because the denominator is greater than the numerator. Therefore, both these ratios are less than 1. That means the condition that the ratio should be less than or equal to 1.96. This holds good. Therefore, we can assume that the difference score is normally distributed in the population. So this descriptive table tells us that our variable is normally distributed. Now we come to the next output table, that is test of normality. See, Shapiro-Wilk test will be used because the sample size is 19, which is less than 50. The statistics is, Shapiro-Wilk statistics is 0.956. 0.956. Our main question is whether this statistics is significant or not. So our final answer will be that this is significant. But we can infer about it on the basis of this significance value. This significance value is p-value. P-value. In brief, p-value. So if this significance value is greater than alpha value, then it is not significant. So this is greater than 0.05. Therefore, it is not significant. And since it is not significant, so we cannot reject the null hypothesis. And what is null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is that this distribution is not significantly different from normality. So once we are not able to reject it, that means the distribution is normally distributed. So the assumption of normality holds good. Thirdly, the outlier. You just inspect this outlier. You do not find any point, any point on the beyond the upper or lower whisker. You do not find anything here in this area. This is blank. You do not find anything here this is blank. So there are no significant outliers. Now, these two whiskers are almost equal. This line is not exactly in the middle, but it is almost in the middle. So from this, we can infer that distribution is normal and without outliers. The same discussion is to be written like this: interpretation of normality output. Now I am showing it how to write. So this will be written like this. We will refer to the table. Table number 1 shows that the value of the ratio of the skewness for the difference scores D and its standard error is 0.065 divided by 0.524, and this is less than 2, 1.96, roughly 2, thus not significantly different from 0. That is, this may be considered as 0. Further, the value of kurtosis 2 is not significant. Thus, the distribution of difference scores appears to be normal. Now, results of Shapiro-Wilk test, 0.96. Now, please note this, that whenever we write interpretation, we just do not write only the p-value, but we write the value of the statistics first. So value of the statistics is this 0.956. We begin with this. The value of the statistics is this. Well, degree of freedom is this much, and p-value is this much. This is taken from the table. Now it is greater than 0.05. This we have added. Why? Because in order to conclude about the significance, we have to compare it with alpha level. Alpha is 0.05. It is greater than 0.05. Therefore, it is not significant at 0.05 level of significance, indicating the normality of D scores. That means D scores are normal. Now, by a visual inspection of the box plot, it can be seen there are no scores beyond upper and lower whiskers, indicating absence of outliers. Thus, we can conclude that the distribution is normal. So, first condition is fulfilled. First assumption hold good. The difference scores between the difference of pre and post test scores, post adjustment scores, it is normally distributed in the population. This we have checked. Now we come to the another assumption, that is homogeneity assumption. So homogeneity of paired variances. Now Pittman-Morgan test is used for testing the homogeneity of paired variances. And the reference for this is, what is this Pittman-Morgan test? Pittman-Morgan test is correlation coefficient RDS between difference and the sum of pre and post test scores. Pittman-Morgan test is nothing but correlation coefficient between the difference scores and the sum scores. Sum and difference. And the reference is Snedeker and Kochran, 1967. So this is not a new test, but we never use it. We are not in a habit to use the assumptions, test of assumptions. Snedeker and Kochran, 1967, page 197. Now, non-significant value of RDS, yani correlation coefficient between difference and sum, means that two paired variances are homogeneous. So what we have to do, we have already calculated the difference score. We will again calculate the sum score, and then we will find out correlation between these two, and we will check whether it is significant or not. If it is not significant, then we will consider the paired variances to be equal. Now let us take this example through SPSS, pre and post counseling, same example. So you have to simply calculate two new variables, sum of pre and post and difference of pre and post, and find out their correlation. That will lead you to the test of homogeneity of variances. Now this was pre and post. So compute, we can first calculate D. D is pre adjustment minus post adjustment. Okay. So again, once again, what do we do? Transform, compute. Now this time it is S sum. And the numeric expression is pre-adjustment plus post-adjustment. Okay. So these are the two new variables created, difference score and sum score. This is 68 plus 56, 124, 23 plus 54, 77, and so on. Now we have to simply find out R between these two variables, correlation coefficient. So we analyze, and we go to correlate and select the first one, bivariate, and bring these variables here, pre and post. Oh, sorry, D and S. D and S. This is Pearson. So this is the output which we get. We get correlation table like this, DD, and here we have DS, 2 rows, one first row D, second row S, similarly 2 columns, first column D, second column S. So this one is correlation coefficient between D and D. So naturally anything correlated with itself is 1, perfect correlation. And D correlated with S is 0.159. So R, the value of R is 0.159. Similarly, S correlated with D is 0.159. And the S correlated with S is 1. So we have to use just this one value. This value is same as this one. This is value of correlation coefficient, and this is two-tailed significance value. So now it is easy to interpret from this, because two-tailed significance value is 0.517. 0.517 is to be compared with alpha level. Alpha level is 0.05. So this value, obtained value, calculated value is of P is less than the alpha level. Therefore, is greater than the alpha level, 0.05. Therefore, it is not significant. So the theory is that if this correlation coefficient between D and S is not significant, then we can take the variances to be equal. Therefore, the variances are equal. That's simple. So we have seen this. It is correlation coefficient between difference in sum score. Non-significant value of RDS means two paired variances are homogeneous. So we have seen that this is homogeneous. But how to write it again? This is the output. And I discussed it with you already. Now this will be written like this. The table 3 shows that the correlation coefficient between the difference and sum of pre-test and post-test scores is 0.159 with significance value of 0.517, which is greater than 0.05. Thus, it is not significant at 0.05 level of significance. Hence, the paired variances can be assumed to be homogeneous. That is the second assumption we have checked. Now, third assumption, thus the assumption of homogeneity of paired variances holds good, and we can proceed further. Now, third assumption was checking the assumption of linearity. Example, a group is tested for stress before and after giving it treatment to reduce stress. We have a group of, say, employees who we feel are stressed. So we try to reduce their stress by giving them some sort of treatment. And for that, we measure their stress before treatment and after treatment. So this is the design: single group, pre-test, post-test. Variable is stress, and treatment is, say, counseling. Let us suppose it is counseling. This is an example of a data set. Linearity assumption is assessed using scatter or dot plot between pre-stress and post-stress. This is assessed using graphical approach, graphical method. and post-test scores by following the route below. How to find this scatter or dot plot? This is from graph. From graph, we can draw this graph between pre and post stress. I will show you how. This is the output, but let me show you how this output was obtained. So let me go to the data set. This is pre-stress, post-stress. So here there are two variables. One is pre-stress, there are no values, means it is not nominal scale variable, both are scale variables. No. And another is post-stress. So we have data and this sample size is 25. So there are 25 employees who have been pre-tested for stress and they were given treatment for 1 month or 15 days, and then again their stress was measured using the same test. Now we want to check the linearity of the relationship. The third assumption underlying paired sample t-test. This is done through this graph. Now, one way I told you yesterday, legacy dialog, and then we can come to scatter or dot. This is scatter dot plot. And then we will select simple scatter and we'll define all that. But today I want to show you another way, and that is through chart builder. There is another way to obtain the graphs, and that is through, this is interactive way to draw graphs. So on the left side, you have the variables pre-stress and post-stress. Where choose from what kind of graph do you want? Do you want bar, line, area, pie, polar, scatter dot, histogram, high-low, box plot, dual, even box plot we can get from here. Histogram, we can get scatter dot. So we want a scatter dot. We'll click at this scatter dot. So this is, we want this one, scatter dot. So you just select it and drag it to this gallery. So here we find x-axis and y-axis. So which variable you want to put on x-axis? Put pre-stress on x-axis. So again, drag this variable to x-axis. And post-stress as y-axis. Now simply click at OK. And you get the output like this. This is the scatter plot of pre-stress and by post-stress. Now, double click at this graph. Double click. So this becomes activated for further treatment, for editing, for modification. Now here, see this, there is a line between x-axis and y-axis, there is a line. You just keep your cursor, you will find add fit line at total. Add fit line at total. Here it is add interpolation line, and so on. There are so many things, but we need this one, add fit line at total. So a line has been drawn here, and this is by default. You just close this window and click anywhere outside this chart, we get this one. So what does it mean? It means this is the regression line. Matlab, these points are these points on this line? No, definitely they are not on this line, but they are on either side of the line. If the shape of the points, if the shape of these points can be considered as a line, then this relationship between x and y, or pre-stress and post-stress, can be considered linear. Now here it can be considered as linear because if you draw a line here, let me come to the presentation. This is the output graph 1, scatter plot between pre and post stress. This is pre-stress, this is post-stress. Now, if I draw a line enclosing all these points, it will be something like this. What is the shape of this figure? The shape of this figure is like an oval. This is oval shaped, sort of ellipse. So if your shape of these points which enclose all these scatter or dots is like a circle or a rectangle or a square or an oval shaped, then you may consider that the variable is linearly related. If the points are like this, say suppose the points may be like this. One point is here, one point is here, another point is here, another point is here, another here. So I enclose this, so I will be able to enclose it like this. So this is not linear. This is parabolic, a curvilinear. A curve is fitting. What does best fit into these points? What does best fit into these points? A line. So we from this observation of these points, we can regard that the relationship between the pre-stress and post-stress is linear, because we cannot visualize anything else other than a line or other than a square, rectangle, oval shape. No. This is how it is to be interpreted. So interpretation of this assumption will be written like this. Graph 1 depicts scatter plot of pre and post stress scores of the selected subjects and the regression line fitting to the plotted points. It is clear from the observation of the graph that the points are situated around the regression line and no shape other than the line is visualized. No other shape, no curve is there, no parabola is there, no hyperbola is there. Therefore, we may consider it to be linear. Thus, the pre-stress and post-stress scores may be assumed to have linear relationship. So this was for as far as the assumptions of the test were concerned. So we saw that there are three main assumptions of paired sample t-test. One is normality of difference scores. Second is homogeneity of variances of paired variances, and third is linearity of this pre and post test scores. Now we are in a position to, if all these three are satisfied, then we can go ahead with the paired sample t-test. If not, the question may arise, what will happen if the one of the assumptions is not fulfilled? Then we must try non-parametric counterpart of this, non-parametric cousin of this paired sample t-test, which is Mann-Whitney test, sign test. Otherwise, if the conditions get fulfilled, then we must conduct the paired sample t-test. Now we will be conducting two-tailed, first we will be conducting two-tailed paired sample t-test. Two-tailed means we have formulated null hypothesis, not directional hypothesis. And we will check whether the difference between two means is zero or not. Or in other words, whether the two means are significantly different or not. So we have a data set, and to tell this data 4. So this is quite simple. Conducting this is quite simple. This second example, pre-stress and post-stress. This we have taken up for conducting the paired sample t-test. So the process is like this: analyze, then compare means, and paired sample t-test. After independent sample t-test, we have this option, paired sample t-test. Click at this option. So a dialog box appears and it asks, give your paired variables. So my paired variables are pre-stress and post-stress. Select these both by pressing the shift and clicking. So both of these are selected and click them here. Okay. So the just two commands and you get the output of the paired sample t-test. The output of the paired sample t-test comprises of three tables. First table is descriptive statistics. Pre-stress mean, sample size, standard deviation, standard error of mean. Post-stress mean scores, sample size, standard deviation, and this. Then paired sample correlation, because it uses correlation between pre and post test. So correlation is 0.602, and this is a significant correlation, 0.001. Sample size is 25. Now paired sample this is the paired sample t-test proper. These are the results of paired sample t-test. We have pre minus post. Pre minus, it could have been post minus pre. The pre minus post. Mean is 6.88. See, what does it mean? Pre-stress minus post-stress. The scores are there. Their mean is 6.88. That means pre-stress is greater than the post-stress because the mean is positive. See this standard deviation, standard error of mean, 95% confidence interval for this difference, and t-value, df, and significance two-tailed. Now, first of all, I will try to focus on this. This approach, I discussed three approaches. One, critical value approach, second, p-value approach, and third, confidence interval approach. And I told you that by means of observing the 95% confidence interval, we can also reach at the same conclusion. If the lower limit and upper limit, this interval from lower limit to upper limit does not contain zero, then null hypothesis should be rejected. If it contains zero, that is on lower side you have a negative value, negative limit, on upper side you have a positive limit, then null hypothesis is not rejected because zero is there in the confidence interval. But this confidence interval does not contain zero. This is positive. The difference is, what does it mean? It means in 90, there is 95% confidence. We can take and we can say that the difference between these two means is from 0.85 to 12. So the difference is not zero. The difference may be anything between roughly 1 to 13. 1 to 13. Difference is 1 to 13. The pre-test difference between pre and post-test scores is not zero. That means our treatment has been effective because this difference is positive. Yani pre-stress has been more than post-stress. Post-stress has been reduced and reduced by 1 to 13. 1 to 13 scores, 1 to 13 points. So this is another way to infer about the null hypothesis or to test the null hypothesis. But now I go back to the presentation and try to show you how this is to be interpreted. This is the first table, paired sample statistics. Then second table, paired sample correlation. And third table, paired sample test results for stress. So these are the output of the paired sample test will consist of these three tables. And how to write it. Let me first discuss, say this simply describes their means. Pre-stress mean is 42.52, post-stress mean is 35.64. So there is a difference of 6 point something, which we saw there. Their standard deviation is this. The correlation between these two is this, and now this. The difference is 6.88. Means post-stress is lower than pre-stress by 6.88 points on an average. And the value of t is 2.36. Now we will interpret this value t. T is 2.36. Degree of freedom 24. Significance 0.027. As you know by now, we begin with the t-value. We start with the t-value. The t-value for stress is 2.36. With degree of freedom 24, its significance value two-tailed because we are conducting a two-tailed test. So we will use this value as it is, 0.027. And this value is greater than or smaller than 0.05? It is less than 0.05. Therefore, it is Therefore, it is significant. That means the null hypothesis that there is no significant difference between the mean score of pre-stress before the treatment and after the treatment is rejected. Now to find out which mean is greater, we will refer to the table number 4. Although it is clear from here also, it is positive. But we may go to table 4 to find out this. Okay, since these two mean scores are not same, there is a significant difference. So when there is a significant difference, we have to tell which mean is greater or smaller than the other. So mean is this 42.52 pre-stress mean is greater than the post-stress mean. That means the treatment has been able to lower the mean. So that means treatment has been effective. So to write this interpretation, we write this like this. It can be observed from table 6 that the value of paired T statistics, T 2.36, degree of freedom 24, P 2 tailed. These things have to be mentioned, 3 things. First, the value of T, second, the value of degree of freedom, and third, the value of significance or P. And 2 tailed also is 0.027, which is less than 0.05. Therefore, it is significant because P value is less than alpha value. Therefore, it is significant at 0.05 level of significance. Next, so it is significant. Next will be decision about null hypothesis. So in the light of this, the null hypothesis that there is no significant difference in the mean score of stress before and after the treatment is rejected. Hypothesis assumes that there is no significant difference, but there is a significant difference. We have seen that T value is significant. Therefore, we have to reject the null hypothesis. That means there is a significant difference in the mean scores of stress before and after treatment. Now, since there is a significant difference, saying this, I have seen many PhD theses, where researchers stop at this point and they say finish. There is a significant difference, but they do not bother to tell what does it mean. This means we have to tell which one is greater, which one is smaller, and whether treatment has been effective or not. Our objective is to find out the effectiveness of the treatment in lowering the stress. So we must conclude regarding that. This means that the mean scores of stress before and after the treatment differ significantly. This is saying the same thing. And further, it can be seen from table 4 that the mean score of stress after the treatment, 35.64, is significantly lower than the mean score of stress, 42.52, before the treatment. So stress after the treatment is lower than stress before the treatment. If your blood pressure was high and then you took medicine and your blood pressure becomes low, then the medicine has been effective. Therefore, it can be concluded that the treatment has been effective in lowering the stress of the subject. So this is how the interpretation of this paired sample t-test has to be written. So I have told you how to test assumptions and write its interpretation, how to conduct two-tailed test and write its interpretation. Now I come to one-tailed test. One-tailed test situation is same as there is no difference as far as the procedure of conducting paired t-sample test is concerned. It is same. The output of one-tailed test and the two-tailed test is same. The only difference is in 2 things. First, in paired sample t-test, the researcher states directional hypothesis. Because unless it states directional hypothesis, we will not be able to see what is the direction of the means predicted in the statement, in the hypothesis. So directional hypothesis, tells us that mean or score of either pre or post is greater than the remaining one. So first difference is that directional hypothesis is stated rather than null hypothesis. Second is that in interpretation we use the P one-tailed significance value. And one-tailed significance value is not given by the SPSS output. It is to be calculated by dividing the P two-tailed value by 2. So let us see this example. One-tail test is used for testing H1. H1 is the directional hypothesis. P one-tailed is compared with alpha. So in this, as you already know by now, you have done independent sample t-test. P one-tailed is compared with alpha, not P two-tailed. This has to be remembered. Next is P one-tailed is not given the output. It is calculated using P one-tailed is equal to half of P two-tailed. Now this is very important, and most of the researchers, they falter at this point. Say in the two-tailed test, if your p-value is significant, then you straight away reject the null hypothesis. But in one-tailed test, if your p-value is significant, that does not mean that may lead you to rejection of the null hypothesis or non-rejection of the null hypothesis. This depends on whether the observed mean differences are in the direction predicted by the directional hypothesis or not. So these two conditions should obtain before our decision we take a decision to reject null hypothesis. One is that p-value should be less than p one-tailed should be less than alpha. That means t should be significant. Number two, the observed mean difference. Where will get the observed mean difference? The table will tell you the observed mean difference. Which one is greater, which one is smaller. That observed mean differences are in the direction predicted by H1. It should be same as written in the directional hypothesis. If these two conditions are met, then we will reject null hypothesis in favor of directional hypothesis. In case either or both of the above two conditions fail to obtain, H0 is retained. We fail to reject null hypothesis. Suppose this t value is significant, but the direction is in the opposite. The observed means are in the direction opposite to the direction stated in the directional hypothesis. Then the decision should be null hypothesis is not rejected. If t is not significant, then decision is null hypothesis is not rejected because it is not significant. So if it is significant, secondly, we have to check additionally, we have to check the order of the means, which one is greater, and this order must match with the directional hypothesis. Now, this is the output of data 7 module 4 we have already seen. Paired sample test statistics, pre-adjustment. Okay, this is different. Pre-adjustment. Pre-adjustment mean score is 39.211 and post-adjustment mean score is 49.70. And a treatment has been given to improve the adjustment, say of teachers, school adjustment of the teachers. Some kind of treatment was given and we pre-assess them on adjustment and post-assess them on adjustment, and we got these two means. And we want to test whether there is a mean significant difference in these two means. So these are the two means, these are two standard deviations. This is correlation 0.369, 0.120. Although we have not used this correlation, but it has been taken into consideration while calculating t value. Correlation is taken into consideration for calculating t value. And if you suppose you do not include this table 8, then it is difficult to tell from this whether it is paired sample or independent sample. Although pre-adjustment and post-adjustment indicate that it is paired sample t-test. Now, this is the proper t-test result. See the difference. Pre-adjustment minus post-adjustment minus negative difference. That means pre-adjustment is lower, post-adjustment is higher. That is why we get a negative mean. Right? Now see, the confidence interval is 95% confidence interval is this. Lower is minus 14, upper is plus 1. So 0 lies between this interval. 0 lies between this interval. That means null hypothesis should be rejected, should be accepted. Why? Because 0 is 0, this interval, confidence interval contains 0. Therefore, difference may be regarded as 0. And if it was a two-tailed test, suppose it were a two-tailed test. Here it is a one-tailed test, but suppose it were a two-tailed test. This p-value, two-tailed p-value, no, this is greater than 0.05. That means not significant. So the decision reached by p-value and decision reached by this confidence interval approach, they tally with each other. Null hypothesis not rejected. Null hypothesis not rejected. Okay. But this is one-tailed test. This is not two-tailed test. So we will not use this 0.088. We will use half of this. Half of this is 0.044. Half of this is 0.044. So this is the p-value which is to be used now for comparing it with alpha. Now, as you see, this value is less than alpha. This value is less than alpha. Therefore, this t value is significant. This t is significant. But that does not mean that we should reject the null hypothesis. Why? Because additionally, we must ensure that the observed mean are in the same direction as predicted by the directional hypothesis. So if the second condition is also met, then we will reject the null hypothesis and retain the directional hypothesis. So I come to its interpretation. Writing interpretation of one-tailed t-test. Directional hypothesis. So researchers should have directional hypothesis, because if directional hypothesis is this one, then it may get rejected. If it is different, then it may not get rejected. So suppose the directional hypothesis is the mean score of post-adjustment is significantly higher than the mean score of pre-adjustment, because we want to increase the adjustment of the teachers, school adjustment of the teachers, and for that we are giving treatment. And we have seen that at many places, researchers have reported that the counseling technique is very effective technique for increasing the adjustment. Therefore, we also expect that our treatment will enhance the adjustment of the school teachers. So we have made a directional hypothesis and we have postulated that the mean score of post adjustment is greater than the mean score of pre adjustment. Means our treatment is effective. Now, as observed from table 9, the value of test statistics T is minus 1.80. Degree of freedom 18, T2 tailed is 0.088. Now, thus P1 tailed is half of 0.088, that is 0.044, which is less than 0.05, is significant at 0.05 level of significance. Further, now coming to the next condition is further from table 7, the mean score of post adjustment 45.790 is significantly greater than the mean score of pre-adjustment. If we observe table number 7, their mean scores are given. The mean score of post-adjustment is 45.79. Mean score of pre-adjustment is 39.21. So we have simply reported these two. Now, in view of significance of T and the observed direction being the same as stated in H1, H1 also says the same thing. The mean score of post adjustment is significantly higher. And here also we see the post adjustment mean is higher than the pre-adjustment mean. Therefore, the direction is same. So in view of the significance of t-test and the observed direction being the same as stated in H1, the null hypothesis is rejected in favor of the directional hypothesis. Therefore, as H1 is retained, this should be H1. Hence, H1 is retained. To conclude, the treatment has been effective in enhancing the adjustment of the students. Hence, H1 is retained. Directional hypothesis which we tested, so our test results say that they should be retained. So we have retained this. The mean score of post adjustment is significantly higher than the mean score of pre-adjustment. That means our treatment has been effective in enhancing the adjustment. So this is how one-tailed t-test output is to be interpreted. Now we come to the effect size. There is one more thing. Using separate paired t-tests. Now suppose a researcher has stated his objective like this. Suppose a researcher wishes to test the following null hypothesis to compare the mean scores of reading speed of students before and after corrective measures separately for central vision loss and peripheral vision loss groups. So there are two groups. Now the researcher is working with students having vision loss, low vision student, and low vision is of two kinds. One is central vision loss, second is peripheral vision loss. And she wants to study the reading speed before and after correcting this vision loss. She uses some special apparatus, special devices to improve the vision, and just sees whether the corrective measures have been effective in case of central vision loss and peripheral vision loss separately and overall. Overall, we already know. Overall, we can calculate paired sample t-test, but separately we can find out, we can conduct this paired sample t-test using the split file command which I discussed in my first lecture, in my first session. So I take an example of a data and show you what kind of data will be there and how to conduct this paired sample t-test simultaneously for two groups. So in this situation, two separate paired t-tests are called for. One for students with central vision loss and second for students with peripheral vision loss. This can be done using split file command easily. So now I go to the data set. This is the data. I name it split file so as to remember that this data is to be used for teaching this split file. Now look at this data set. We have now three variables. One is vision loss. Vision loss is a nominal scale variable, partition variable, nominal scale, and it is of two kinds. One, central vision loss, two, peripheral vision loss. And then we have pre-reading speed and post-reading speed. So if this first variable is removed, then we have traditional single paired sample data comparing post-reading speed with pre-reading speed, as we discussed just now. But now the situation is a bit different. Here we want to compare like this. We want to compare separately this data This is first data. We want to compare the post-test and pre-test scores, mean scores for the first vision loss students. Then again for this second group separately. So for this is quite easy. If we use the command split file, so it is in data split file. This is analyze all cases, do not create groups, but we want to create groups, organize output by group. And what is our basis of splitting file? Vision loss. So vision loss is selected and taken here. The groups are based on vision loss. And okay. Close this output window, go to data set. Now in the right corner, we find here split by vision loss. So split file is working now. This indicates that split file is working. Now you simply do the paired sample t-test. Compare means paired sample t-test. Pre-reading and post-reading. Okay. Finish. See, now we have output separately for these two vision loss. First is vision loss is equal to central. So we have three tables: paired sample statistics, paired sample correlation, and paired sample test. For this, all these three tables are for first vision loss, that is central vision loss. Next, we have vision loss peripheral. So for the second kind of vision loss, we have this paired sample correlation and t-test. So we wanted two separate paired sample t-test, and we have been able to have output regarding these two paired sample t-test using the split file command. Now I just close it down and go back to the data set. Suppose I conducted paired sample t-test like this. Now analyze, compare means paired sample t-test. So now it is split file is working. We must remove this split file first. Data, split file. No, all analyze all cases. Do not split file. So this is removed. Now split file is not working. There is nothing written in this corner. Now I conduct this paired sample t-test. So we get just one output: paired sample statistics, paired sample correlations, paired sample test. This is for overall, taking group 1 and group 2 together, irrespective of what kind of vision loss students we are talking. Overall, so we can have 3 pair tests, one separately and also overall. So in many researches, you will find this kind of objective, that to compare the mean score of reading speed of students before and after corrective measure, overall and separately. Overall and separately. Overall also you can include, then we will have 3 paired sample t-test. So this way we can conduct paired sample t-test simultaneously for subgroups as well as for the total group. Now we are nearing completion. Only one point remains, that is effect size. So effect size for paired sample t-test is calculated using this formula: D is equal to T upon under root n. Now, referring to this last slide, this one. So value of T is 1.802 and value of N is 19. Value of N is 19. This is table 7, value of N is 19. There are 19 pairs and value of T is 1.802. We will require these two values. Substitute these values in this formula. So D becomes 1.802 divided by under root 19, that is 0.413. There is another formula, D is equal to difference between paired means divided by standard deviation of this difference. D is difference between the paired means divided by the standard deviation of the difference. This is again, this can be taken from table 9. Let us go to that slide. See, this is difference, paired difference. So what is the paired difference? Minus 6.579. And what is the standard deviation? Standard deviation is 15.914. So these two values are to be used in calculating the effect size using the alternative formula. So D is 6.579 divided by 15.914 is equal to 0.413, same thing, same. Now we can interpret this. The value of D is 0.413, which is less than 0.5, indicates a small effect for the treatment. D of 0.2 is small, D of 0.5 is medium, D of 0.8 is large. So this does not reach 0.5, it is a bit little less than 0.5. So we can say the effect size is small but nearing medium. Hence, the success of the therapy in reducing stress has been small but close to medium. This is what we can interpret. Now, today, there are a few participants who are in communication with me, who WhatsApp their output and seek my feedback, or who send me mail, and they seek my feedback. Now, one of the candidates, she sent me mail. From that, I found that she has calculated effect size using SPSS. Till now, I did not know whether SPSS can be used for finding out effect size. But then I talked to her, how could you calculate this in SPSS? I have latest version SPSS 26, and there is no command for calculating effect size in that. Otherwise, I could also have calculated. She said, I am having an experimental kind of version, trial version, so which might have some enhanced features which make it possible to calculate effect size in SPSS also. But there are other sources also, free sources, other automatic sources, other software which can be used to calculate. Just Google and you will find software to calculate effect size automatically. You need not use this formula and substitute the values and make calculations. You will be given directly the value of this 0.413. So we were at this point. We were here. So we have calculated effect size for paired sample t-test using two formulas and seen how to interpret the effect size. Now, there is an exercise, practice exercise, interpret the normality assumption. Here you find the variable is pre minus post. Pre minus post is the variable, and this is the output of the descriptive statistics. We went to explore, descriptive, explore, and then this one, plot, normality plot with test. So this is the descriptive table. Then we have test of normality, and then another exercise, compute effect size for table 2. So let us try to do this. Practice exercise, interpret the normality assumption. Shall I ask you or shall I tell myself? Will anyone try to interpret this table? No. No one, none. So from table 10, then I am doing it from table 10. It is clear that the values of skewness and kurtosis are 0.087 and 0.642 respectively, which are within plus minus 2 range permissible for normality. Therefore, this pre minus post, that is difference between pre-test and post-test scores, appears to be normal. Again, the Z score for skewness is 0.087 divided by 0.467. Because the denominator is greater than the numerator, this ratio is less than 1. Similarly, the second ratio is less than 1. Therefore, the Z for skewness and Z for kurtosis, each one is less than 1.96, indicating that the variable pre minus post is normally distributed. Now coming to the test of normality, Kolmogorov-Smirnov test and Shapiro-Wilk test. This is the output of test of normality. Shapiro-Wilk test will be interpreted because of the sample size of 25 being less than 50. Now Shapiro-Wilk statistics is 0.957, degree of freedom 25, and p-value is 0.355. This is greater than the alpha level of 0.05. Therefore, this is not significant. Thus, the null hypothesis that the distribution of pre minus post scores is significantly different from normality is not rejected. Thus, we can assume that the difference scores of pre and post, whatever it is normally distributed. Now, come to the next exercise. This is compute effect size from the table below. So effect size you can calculate in two ways. One is dividing t by under root n. So t is effect size is equal to t divided by under root n. So square root of n. Okay, what is the value of t? The value of t is 2.36. This is equal to 2.36 divided by square root of 25. This degree of freedom square root of 25. This is equal to 2.36 divided by 5. This is equal to 0.5 4 is 20. 5 4 is 20, 36. 5 7 is 35. So this is 0.75. The effect size is 0.75. Now using another formula, effect size is, if you want to calculate using that formula also, effect size is this mean difference divided by 6.88 divided by 14.592. 6.882 divided by 6.880 divided by 14.592. 592. This is equal to use calculator. 6.88 divided by 14.592. This is 0.47 now, 0.471 up to 0.47. So this way we have calculated effect size. Now we can interpret it as per Cohen's guideline. Effect size is small, but bordering at medium. So we have been successful in doing this, whatever it was, to about medium level. So this is how we will calculate and interpret it. Now, last is home assignment. Please note this home assignment. Those who are interested in conducting it, take hypothetical data, sample size 35, suitable to be analyzed with the paired sample t-test. Secondly, check the distributional assumptions before conducting the test and interpret the output. First of all, you have to take 35 data. Sample size 35, data will be 70, pre-test and post-test. No, it is suitable to be analyzed by using paired sample t-test. Check distributional assumptions before conducting the test and interpret the output. So check the normality of the difference scores, check the paired sample homogeneity of variance test, Pittman-Morgan test, and linearity of the scores. Then thirdly, conduct paired t-test and interpret output. And fourthly, compute effect size and write interpretation. So this home assignment is for those who are motivated, interested, who want to follow up with whatever has been taught. So it is close to 4:45. So now I open it for discussion if there is any question. I have finished my today's session. Host, please unmute all participants. Let them ask question, if any. Dr. Gupta.
Yes, sir. I have unmuted all.
Any question?
Sir, from viewer side, I am not seeing any question. If all of you are listening to my voice, please raise your question. I have unmuted all.
I'm checking the chat. Let me see the chat.
I am looking at the chat. I am not seeing any question.
There is a question. There is a question.
One tail test, please.
There is a question regarding confidence interval. Confidence, sir, for one tail p-value was divided by 2, but the confidence interval, which was not significant, was ignored. Please explain it. See, the confidence interval is for testing the null hypothesis, not the directional hypothesis. That is why we reason out like this: if 0 lies within the interval, 0 lies within the confidence interval, then null hypothesis is retained. We are in the context of null hypothesis, not in the context of directional hypothesis. So that approach, confidence interval approach, applies for testing the null hypothesis only, not the directional hypothesis. We cannot halve this confidence interval. We can halve the p-value. P-value can be divided by 2, but not the limits of the confidence interval. One question is, please elaborate how to normalize the negatively skewed data, which transformation required for that. My answer is, one of the participants sent me a data. She was having the same problem. Data was negatively skewed. I have suggested her, I do not know whether she has done it till now or not, that you can reverse the data. Reverse the data means you apply the reciprocal transformation. What will happen? The scores which are outlier on the lower side, they will become outlier on the upper side. That is, the lower score, smaller scores will become, and the bigger scores will become smaller. So the distribution which is negatively skewed now will become the positively skewed distribution. And then you may apply logarithmic transformation, you may apply square root transformation, and see whether you are able to solve the problem of outlier and normality or not.
Sir, I have one question.
Whether there is any other question?
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Sir, may I audible?
Yes,
sir, I have one question.
You are audible. Yes.
Sir, if the data is not homogeneity, so can we apply non-parametric test, or it is condition we can use parametric test also?
Okay, which test you are talking about? You are talking about t-test, you are talking about what?
We just use t-test.
About t-test or one way or in general all parametric test?
Any case, if the data, if the value is a homogeneity, heterogeneity, not a homogeneity.
The answer will be different for different statistical techniques. As we saw that in t-test, if the equality of variance assumption is not met, then there is a way out.
Okay.
Is it okay or not? There is a way out. But when the sample sizes are not equal, they are unequal, they are uneven, unbalanced, then there is a problem. And there is a way to get out of that problem also. So when the homogeneity of variance assumption is not fulfilled, you have to make certain modifications in the procedure, but you can still apply the procedure.
No, my question is that what types of procedure we applied?
What type of?
Procedure. You said some procedure we apply.
That is what I have told you. I have told you that when there is a provision that the homogeneity of variance, equality of variance assumption, assuming this and not assuming this so there are two procedures. One is for equal variance, another is for unequal variances. And the
Okay.
procedure is making adjustments in the degree of freedom. Therefore,
Okay.
degree of freedom is in fraction when
Okay.
we are dealing with uneven variances. Is that okay?
Okay. Okay, sir. Okay.
Sir, one question, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Oh, sir, in theoretically, a t-test is being applied for small sample size, and z-test is being applied for large sample size. But in SPSS, we know that even for large sample, t-test is being applied. Will there be any contradiction, sir?
Will the host repeat the question? I am not being able to understand.
Sir, theoretically,
Please
t-test is being,
speak loudly.
theoretically,
Mr. Dr. Gupta. Please,
so let me repeat once again, sir. Theoretically, the t-test is being used for small sample size less than equal to 30, and z-test is being used for large sample size. But in SPSS, we come to know that this t-test is being used for large sample size also.
yes, t-test is used for all sample sizes. Who says t-test is used for less than 30?
Sir, in statistical books, we come across that for small sample size t less than equal to 30, the sample size less than equal to 30 for this t test is used. For z test, large sample size greater than 30 is being used.
Yes,
This is clearly written in books.
My dear, they say that for samples, small samples, you call it T. For large sample, you call it Z. It is same. It is T. T approaches Z when the sample size is large. There is
Okay,
no
okay,
difference. T is
okay,
a general procedure.
okay, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you.
I have not get
Any other
voice or
question, please?
question.
Open up. Ask questions.
Please raise your questions.
Okay, then shall we break for the day?
Yes, sir. Many.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes,
Sir, I have one question.
Please.
please ask.
Can I ask?
Yes, please ask.
Okay. Sir, please, can you please repeat the procedure to tackle the situation of unequal sample sizes in t-test?
Unequal sample sizes. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
You have elaborated that yesterday, but I am a little bit not understanding that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. First of
Thank
all,
you.
let us understand what is meaning of unequal sample size. We call two samples unequal when the larger sample is more than 1.5 times, no? More than 1.5 times of the smaller sample.
Yes,
So
yes.
you understand what is the unequal samples. Now, what is the problem with unequal samples? When variances are equal, there is no problem with the sample sizes. Whether the samples are equal or unequal, no, there is no problem. But when the samples are unequal and the variances are also unequal, then there is a problem. Then the p-value is not reliable. P-value will give wrong result, false results, will mislead you, will give you invalid results. So the problem to be solved is in case of unequal variances, the sample sizes are to be made equal. How to make sample sizes equal? By selecting from the large sample, good sample, the number of cases as there are in the smaller sample. Suppose bigger sample is 80, smaller sample is 20. So you select out of 80, 20 cases randomly. Random selection ensures that the sample of 20 out of 80 is representative. Not you have lost the data randomly.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We can apply it.
Now it is very clear to me. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other, please? Okay, then tomorrow we will be taking up one-way analysis of variance. So
Okay,
it
sir.
is better if you come prepared. You read some related literature, some you go through some book or some whatever you can, and come prepared. Tomorrow we will be talking about one-way analysis of variance, one-way ANOVA.
Okay, sir.
So Dr. Gupta, we break
Sir.
for the day.
Ji, sir. Many, many thanks to you, sir.
No, thank you all. Thank you all.
Ji. And many, many thanks to all learners. We will meet again tomorrow.